The city had that thick, held-breath quiet, the kind that makes small sounds feel like confessions. Officer Russell Kane rolled down 5th Street, counting the dark storefronts by habit. 15 years on patrol will either dull your senses or hone them. He was never sure which one had claimed him. The radio crackled with routine calls. He almost answered, then saw a shape slip behind a hardware store. Just a hush of motion near a row of dented metal dumpsters. He parked without killing the headlights, let the engine idle a beat, then shut it off and listened. "Hello," he called, soft enough not to break the night. His flashlight cut through dew-slick lids and torn cardboard. That's when he heard it, a low, apologetic sound, the kind that tries not to exist. A whimper. He lifted the heavy lid like peeling back a bandage. Between black bags and broken boxes lay a German shepherd, not the glossy, poster-ready kind. This one was all angles and shadows, ribs like pale fingers under a matted coat, grime braided into fur. But the eyes... Those eyes were sober and unmoving, fixed on him with a clear, almost human attention. "Easy, buddy," Russell murmured. No growl. No plea, just watching. Up close, the story deepened. Scars, too many, too neat. Not the ragged road map a stray earns through bad luck, but lines with intent. Someone had written pain on this dog and kept writing it. Dispatch asked if he needed animal control. Another voice on the channel, young and cocky, made a crack about trash can strays. Russell thumbed the volume down and reached into the bin. The dog tensed, every muscle alive, but then chose. He let Russell lift him. His lightness was a report all its own. In the back seat, the shepherd didn't sprawl. He arranged himself, small as possible, careful as furniture, like he'd learned to take up less space to survive. That pricked Russell worse than the scars. He drove the rest of his shift with one eye on the mirrors and the other on those eyes in the rear view. He knew the rules, the forms, the policy language about liability and procedure. He also knew the difference between a file and a life. He went home. Russell's place was a quiet bachelor house that didn't ask much of him. 4 rooms, clean lines, nothing fragile. He laid out old blankets, filled a bowl, warmed some chicken. The dog drank with patience, ate with manners. When Russell tried a gentle sit, the shepherd obeyed with textbook form. Stay. Not a muscle moved. Come. He stopped exactly half a meter away and waited. Training, not luck. Expensive training. You need a name, Russell said. Under the kitchen light, he noticed a gray haze dusting the coat, like soot on a fire that refused to die out. Ash, he decided, one ear tipped, as if the name had always been his. That first night, Russell didn't sleep much. Every small sound from the living room, nails whispering across wood, a sigh, the careful circle of a dog making himself into a comma, snapped his attention awake. He couldn't stop thinking about the collar he'd cut off earlier. Smooth black nylon with a too-clean edge. Not a pet store special. A design meant to be tracked, meant to be found. Someone had paid to keep an eye on Ash. Someone had paid to lose him. At dawn, Russell fumbled a spoon. The clatter against tile split the room in two. Ash sprang up into a tense, braced silence, preparing for a blow that never came. Russell lowered himself to the floor and let the coffee go cold. "You're safe," he said. Not because dogs understand words, but because people do when they're repeated enough. He took photos. The scars, the collar, the posture too careful to be casual. He wrote notes like good cops do when their instincts won't sit down. By noon, the list was longer than he wanted to admit. Deliberate scarring, high-level obedience, cut tracking collar, startle reflex to metal, responds to selective commands. None of this is random. Back at the precinct, the captain's door stayed closed. Russell didn't push it. He passed the hum of desks and the easy jokes about his trash dog and stopped at Detective Laya Vargas's cubicle. Laya had eyes that mapped a room without moving. He set a photo down. She studied it for 3 beats and went still. "These aren't street wounds," she said quietly. "Someone put time into them." He nodded. "And training, too. Document it," she said, already thinking ahead. "And don't talk much. If there's a schedule, there's a clock. If there's a clock, we're already late." That night at home, Ash chose the spot near the bedroom door, the post of a sentinel. Russell lay awake listening to the breath on the other side of the wall and thinking about the clean cut in that collar. Somewhere, a hand had made that slice, steady, practiced. He closed his eyes around a thought that no longer felt like a guess. He hadn't found something lost. He'd pulled a thread, and in 3 days, whatever it was tied to, would pull back. By the third sunrise, Ash had already rewritten the rhythm of his life. The house no longer sounded empty. He caught himself talking out loud when no one else was there, and Ash, never noisy, listened with the patience most people don't possess. Yet, something refused to fit the simple story of a rescued stray. While he brushed warm water through Ash's matted coat, Russell's hand paused at a rough ring around the neck. Beneath the fur, a thin, deliberate line. Not fight damage. Surgical. He traced it with his finger and understood. A microchip had been removed. Whoever took Ash hadn't just abandoned a dog. They'd tried to erase a past. Russell dried his hands, looked at the dog that watched him without flinching, and felt the case click into place. Not a case, a promise. He didn't say it then. He didn't have to. The room already knew. The third day after finding Ash began like any other. Coffee, quiet kitchen, the low hum of the refrigerator, but Russell's instincts wouldn't let him settle. The scars, the training, that surgically clean line on the dog's neck, none of it belonged to the simple story of an abandoned stray. It felt like holding puzzle pieces that clearly belonged to a larger picture. Only the box lid was missing. He bundled his notes, photographs of Ash's wounds, and the cut-tracking collar into a plain manila folder. The weight of it pressed against his ribs like a warning. At the precinct, he walked past the captain's office again, but the door was closed. He didn't even try. He remembered the brusque dismissal the day before. Too quick, too sharp. Something in Captain Morrison's tone had felt less like a man with too much on his plate and more like someone slamming a door before sunlight could get in. Instead, Russell carried his folder to Detective Laya Vargas. She was sipping burnt coffee at her desk, scanning paperwork with that predatory stillness she always carried. He slid a photograph across. She studied the image in silence, then lifted her gaze to him. "These scars are deliberate," she said. "Systematic. Someone wanted to mold pain into this animal." Russell nodded. "And the obedience, it isn't street-learned. He responds like he's been conditioned." Laya leaned back, folding her arms. "Then don't think of him as a stray. Think of him as evidence." She paused. "But keep it quiet. If the captain slammed the brakes that fast, someone doesn't want this case breathing. If there's money in it, and there usually is, the silence won't come free." Her warning buzzed in his ears long after he walked away. That evening, Russell drove Ash across town to Riverside Veterinary Clinic. Dr. Sarah Chen, a seasoned vet known for her discretion and her long work with K9 units, agreed to take a look after hours. The exam room smelled of antiseptic and faint lavender, but Ash hopped onto the table with the composure of a trained officer. Dr. Chen's hands were steady, but her brow furrowed deeper with every pass over his ribs and scars. "Not street wounds," she murmured. "These are layered injuries, old on top of older. They're consistent with forced fights." Russell's jaw tightened. "Dogfighting." Chen didn't answer, just parted the fur along Ash's neck with practiced fingers. She froze. A thin, almost invisible line ran beneath the coat. "This isn't random damage. It's surgical. Microchip?" Russell asked, already knowing. She nodded slowly. "And not the kind they scan at shelters. This cut is too precise. Whoever removed it knew exactly what they were cutting." The words weighed the air. Russell's stomach turned. "Military grade?" Her eyes flicked to his, troubled. "I can't say for certain, but I've seen these before. Service animals, police units, sometimes even classified operations. These chips are almost impossible to tamper with. If someone went through the trouble to carve one out, it wasn't neglect, it was intent." Russell exhaled, steady but heavy. They weren't just trying to get rid of a dog. They were trying to erase what he represented. Chen's hands lingered on Ash's coat a moment longer, gentler now. "Be careful, officer. Whoever wanted his past gone won't appreciate you digging it back up." On the drive home, Ash sat in the passenger seat, ears twitching to the rhythm of the road. The city's streetlights stuttered across his scarred face, each flicker a reminder of what Russell now carried. A case no one asked him to open, and a companion who was no longer just a rescued stray but the center of something deliberate, expensive, and dangerous. At the precinct the next morning, Russell decided to try once more with Captain Morrison. He stepped into the office, laid the photos on the desk, and spoke with all the restraint he could muster. "Sir, this isn't just abandonment. These wounds are patterned. This dog was trained, tracked, and then deliberately stripped of his ID, that scar around his neck. Someone carved out a microchip." The captain's gaze hardened instantly. Not curiosity, not concern, just cold dismissal. We've got 3 homicides on the east side, Kane, and you're here with dog stories? Drop it. That's an order. Russell gathered his folder in silence, but inside he was seething. The reaction had been too fast, too final. It didn't sound like an overworked officer brushing aside a distraction. It sounded like someone bolting the door before questions could escape. In the break room later, Leah caught him by the sleeve. "You look like someone just shoved you off a cliff." Russell slid the photographs across the table. She scanned them, her expression sharpening into stillness again. "That collar isn't from any pet store. And those scars, they're patterned. I've heard rumors, Russell. Rich men, underground rings, fights where dogs are currency and bets change hands in shadows. But it's the kind of rumor that can end careers if you ask the wrong questions." Russell rubbed his temples. "So what do I do? The captain shut me down before I could even finish." Leah pushed the photo of Ash back toward him. "Then you trust your instincts. 15 years, they haven't failed you. Just tread lightly. If Morrison slammed the door that hard, someone's paying to keep it shut." Her words stayed with him as he drove home that night, rain spitting across the windshield. In the rearview mirror, headlights lingered too close, too steady. A black van, Russell's pulse quickened. He turned right, then again. The van followed. He slowed near an intersection, giving the driver room to pass. Instead, the van surged forward, swerving dangerously close. Russell's training seized the wheel. Sharp turn, sudden brake, narrow side street. Tires screamed, the van shot past, and in a blink, it was gone. By the time he pulled into his driveway, his hands still trembled on the wheel. Ash met him at the door, hackles raised, a low growl vibrating in his chest as though he already sensed the threat. Russell knelt, pressing his forehead against the scarred skull. "What trouble did we stumble into, boy?" he whispered. Ash didn't answer, but the look in his eyes said enough. Whatever this was, it had already begun. Russell's house no longer felt like a sanctuary. Every creak in the wood, every hum of the refrigerator carried weight. He double-checked the locks, moved cautiously from room to room, and kept Ash close. The dog had taken to sleeping at the bedroom door, body curled like a sentinel, eyes opening at the faintest disturbance. 3 nights after the near miss with the black van, Russell came home from a late shift and immediately felt something wrong. The porch light, always left burning, was out. His gut clenched. Ash growled low, fur bristling along his back. The front door stood ajar, frame splintered. Russell's pulse spiked. His service weapon was in his hand before he had fully processed the scene. He pressed a shoulder to the siding, listening. The house should have been silent, but beneath the quiet he sensed movement. He stepped inside. The smell hit him first. Sweat, leather, adrenaline, then the blow. Something hard cracked against the back of his skull. He staggered forward, fighting to stay upright. Shouts erupted, heavy boots thudding on the floor. Ash launched himself with a snarl, teeth flashing. Men cursed as the shepherd slammed into them. The chaos dissolved into fists, boots, shouts. Russell swung, grappled, but there were too many. He heard Ash's bark twist into a yelp of pain. "The dog comes with us," a harsh voice barked. "Make sure the cop remembers this lesson." Hands pinned Russell. Another strike blurred his vision. Through the haze, he caught a glimpse of Ash, dragged struggling toward the door. A final kick to his ribs knocked the breath from him, and then silence. The only sound left was the fading growl of an engine as a vehicle sped away, taking Ash with it. Russell slumped against the wall, gasping, ribs screaming with each breath. The house was wrecked, drawers yanked open, belongings scattered across the floor, but none of it mattered. The absence was louder than the destruction. Ash was gone. His phone buzzed weakly in his pocket. With trembling hands, he dialed. "They took him," he rasped into the line when Leah answered. "They took Ash." For a long moment he just sat there, head bowed, blood dripping from his lip. He had promised the dog safety. He had failed. Leah arrived less than an hour later with a paramedic she trusted. They patched his wounds, taped his ribs, wiped the blood from his face. But no bandage could ease the hollow in his chest. "You're still breathing," Leah said firmly as she tied the final wrap. "That means they didn't come to kill you. Not yet." "They came for him," Russell's voice broke. "I promised he'd be safe." Her eyes softened, but only briefly. "Then we get him back. But we can't storm Mercer's empire blind. That's what he's counting on. Mercer." The name cut through the fog. Doyle Mercer, the polished developer who smiled on billboards. The man Leah had whispered about in connection to underground rings. Now Russell could feel the weight of the strings Mercer was pulling. The captain's dismissal, the van, the home invasion. Mercer was behind it. The next morning, while Russell fought waves of exhaustion, Leia dropped a tablet on his table. "While you were being patched up, I asked Chen to send over everything she found in Ash's medical files." Russell leaned forward, every nerve alert. On the screen glowed an image of Ash's scarred neck. "Look here," Leia pointed. "This isn't just the microchip removal scar. There's another, deeper line beneath it. Chen says it's from a specialized implant." Russell's heart hammered. "But we scanned him. Nothing came up, because it's not a standard chip," Leia said. "It broadcasts at a frequency only specialized military scanners can read." Chen recalibrated her equipment. She found it. Hours later, in the back room of the veterinary hospital, the scanner hummed. Dr. Chen moved with careful precision, eyes flicking nervously to the door as if the walls themselves might be listening. Then the machine beeped. The screen lit up with a registration number, then a file. Name: Apollo. Role: Service Dog, United States Navy Veteran Program. Training complete, 2 years ago. Estimated value: $75,000. Status: reported stolen, 6 months earlier. Russell's throat went dry. "Apollo." Chen's voice broke as she read the final note. "Assigned veteran deceased by suicide 3 months ago. Contributing factor listed: loss of service dog." The room fell into suffocating silence. Ash wasn't just a dog, he was Apollo, trained to be a lifeline, stolen and thrown into brutality while the man he was meant to help sank into despair. Russell pressed a hand to his chest, feeling the ache in his ribs but something sharper in his soul. They didn't just steal a dog, they stole a man's last chance. Leia's voice was steady but burned with fury. "Mercer's running an operation, stealing service dogs, fighting some, selling others. It's more than cruelty. It's theft, fraud, destruction of lives." Russell's jaw set. "And now they've taken him back. They think it's over." He looked down at the empty leash on his table, the collar with its severed edge. His ribs throbbed, his head still rang, but beneath it all was a steel resolve. "Wrong," he whispered. "It's just beginning." The days after Ash's abduction blurred into a restless haze. Russell's ribs ached, his head throbbed, but none of it compared to the emptiness of his house. Every quiet room screamed of absence. He replayed the night 100 times, the last bark, the slam of the van door, the engine vanishing into the dark. Each time, the anger grew sharper. Leia refused to let him spiral. She came armed with files, leads, whispers from her network of informants. Together, they pieced it together like shards of glass forming a weapon. Doyle Mercer wasn't just a developer with shiny billboards and city contracts. Behind the polished grin was an empire greased by blood and shadows. Underground dog-fighting rings, stolen service animals, high-stakes betting where cruelty was currency, and worse, the rot had spread into the department. Morrison's clipped dismissal made sense now. It wasn't overwork, it was protection. Mercer had bought silence and the captain was part of the deal. They worked in the margins, building their case one cautious thread at a time. The hidden military chip, the veterinary reports, the photographs of Ash's scars, each piece was documented, secured, hidden in duplicate. Leia whispered names tied to Mercer: shell companies, warehouses, private clubs where men in suits laughed over cages trembling with whimpers. For Russell, it all narrowed to one goal: Ash. When word surfaced of a fight night at one of Mercer's warehouses, Russell knew the risk was fatal. But waiting wasn't an option. Ash's life hung on a clock he couldn't see. "You can't go in alone," Leia warned as they pored over the grainy photos of the warehouse. "If Mercer suspects, you'll disappear before you ever find him." "Then I won't go in as a cop," Russell said. The night smelled of rain and exhaust as Russell walked toward the warehouse dressed in borrowed clothes, dark slacks, cheap jacket, hair slicked back to blur the lines of a uniformed officer. At his throat, hidden in the knot of his tie, a pinhole camera hummed, transmitting every frame back to Leia waiting in the van blocks away. Inside, the world reeked of smoke, sweat, and money. Rows of cages rattled with the sounds of animals too weak to cry louder. Men in suits leaned against railings, whiskey glasses catching the light as they laughed at pain. In the center, a pit ringed with steel barriers waited like a hungry mouth. Russell moved with deliberate calm, scanning faces, memorizing exits, fighting the heat of rage with the cool mask of an intruder who belonged. He wasn't here for evidence, not tonight. He was here for one heartbeat, and then he heard it, a bark. Not just any bark, but one carved into his bones. a rhythm his soul recognized. Ash. His chest tightened as his eyes found the cage. Behind iron bars, thinner than before but alive, Ash met his gaze. The scarred dog stood tall, ears pricked, eyes locked with his, unbroken. Relief surged through him, raw enough to shake him. He took a step, a hand clamped down on his shoulder. Heavy, possessive. Russell turned and came face to face with Doyle Mercer. The man's smile was too smooth, his eyes too sharp. "Officer Kane," Mercer drawled, "didn't I tell you to drop it? And yet here you are, in my house, dressed like a liar." Russell's cover shredded in an instant. 2 guards seized his arms before he could react, dragging him toward the pit. The crowd stirred, excited murmurs spreading like fire. Mercer raised his hand for silence, reveling in the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, a special event tonight," he announced. "A cop who thought he could meddle in my affairs. Let's see if he fights harder than my dogs." The roar of the crowd was deafening. A gate clanged open. A Rottweiler surged into the arena, muscles rippling, eyes wild from training and torment. Russell was shoved into the pit, the iron gate locking behind him. He staggered, ribs screaming, every instinct warning that he couldn't win this fight. The Rottweiler snarled, crouched, ready to lunge. Then another gate banged open. Ash exploded into the arena. His battered body moved with fury and loyalty combined, slamming between Russell and the oncoming threat. His growl was thunder. His stance was unyielding. The Rottweiler hesitated. Training warred with instinct. And Ash, Apollo, stood unflinching, every scar a declaration of defiance. The crowd went silent. For the first time, the illusion Mercer had built, that cruelty was stronger than loyalty, cracked. The Rottweiler faltered, then lowered its head and stepped back. "No." Mercer's voice broke in rage. "Kill them both!" But before his order could echo, sirens wailed outside. Flashlights cut through the smoky air. The doors burst open as Laya led a tactical team in, weapons raised, voices commanding. Panic rippled through the room. Men scattered, glasses shattered, chairs overturned. Russell tore free from his captors, Ash pressing to his leg like they'd never been apart. Amid the chaos, Russell spotted Mercer slipping toward the back exit. Not tonight. He gave chase, tackling the man in a storm of fists, sweat, and dust. They slammed into concrete, traded blows, teeth bared with fury. Russell's ribs screamed, but he didn't let go. Finally, with blood slick on both their faces, he pinned Mercer to the ground, snapping cuffs around his wrists. The empire Mercer thought untouchable had crumbled in one night, not under the weight of money or power, but because of the loyalty of a scarred dog who refused to break. The trial was swift, the evidence overwhelming. The hidden chip, the veterinary reports, the undercover footage, each piece was a nail in Mercer's empire. Witnesses spoke of stolen service dogs, of blood-soaked rings where loyalty was twisted into spectacle. But it wasn't testimony that silenced the court. It was Ash. When a wounded veteran took the stand to describe the dog promised to him, Ash broke free of Russell's side and padded forward. Quiet, steady, he placed his scarred head in the man's lap. The room froze. No lawyer, no argument could erase what that single gesture meant. Mercer's conviction was inevitable. Chains clinked where once there had been cufflinks. His empire was ash itself, burned, gone, never to rise again. Weeks later, Russell walked his neighborhood with Ash at his side. The same neighbors who once flinched at the scarred shepherd now stopped to greet him. Children reached out with open palms, and Ash met them with patient stillness. One evening, beneath a fading sky, Russell laid a hand on his companion's head. "I thought I saved you," he whispered, "but maybe you saved me." Ash leaned closer, loyal eyes reflecting everything they had survived, together.